Hello. I would like to welcome you to Storytime. It's the weekend. We're outside again. Today's story is a very good story about a young heroine, or heroines. It's called Bloom. And I think it's about like a fairy? If you have someone that you'd like to be in here for this story, you can go get them. We'll wait. Ready? Ready? Okay. Bloom by Doreen, Cronin, and David Small. With a special thank you to the Coos Public Library. Once upon a time, in a beautiful glass kingdom, there lived an unusual fairy named Bloom. Her boots were caked with mud. There was dirt between her teeth. Beetles rested in her wings. Bloom's magic could spin sand into glass, turn weeds into blossoms, and grow a trickle of rainwater into a racing river. Bloom was a very helpful creature, but her footsteps were heavy, and she left a trail of tiny cracks and mud wherever she went. As the years passed and the kingdom, Olive, that's someone that can leave a trail of mud wherever she goes to. As the years passed and the kingdom became larger and shinier, the people cared less about Bloom's magic and noticed only the mess that she left behind. Heavy feet and her muddy fingerprints. Bloom had finally had enough. She left without saying goodbye and went to live in the heart of the forest. Both the kingdom and Bloom were extraordinarily happy with the choice they made. Years and years went by, and the glass kingdom had fallen into a state of disrepair. It was held together by duct tape and glue and peasants. And the king was reminded of the powerful creature who once lived in the kingdom. His royal court offered to find her, but the king declined their help. Surely such a creature with such power will answer only to a king. Very well, your highness, but tread lightly. Fairies are delicate and easily frightened. The king entered the forest on his swiftest steed, determined to find the creature and save the kingdom. Bloom felt the horse's hoofbeats and came to greet the king. "I am looking for a magical creature gone many years ago," he announced. "I am here," she answered. The king glanced at Bloom with her dirty hair and clunky shoes. "Show me magic that will save my kingdom," ordered the king. Bloom placed a bucket of mud at the king's feet. "How dare you?" bellowed the king. He dismissed Bloom as a trickster and rode off. "Suit yourself," said Bloom, perfectly happy to go back to her own business. Boy, that's a good lesson, huh? Sometimes you just have to be perfectly happy to let people go do their thing, and you can do yours. Duly noted. When the king returned empty-handed, many days later, the queen decided that she was much better suited to find a magical fairy. Maybe her deep voice frightened her off, the queen said reassuredly. "I must go in your place." The next day, she entered the forest, accompanied by a single guard. Pardon me. Bloom heard their footsteps, and once again, curious, stepped out to greet the queen. "I am looking for a magical creature gone so many years ago," announced the queen. "I am here," answered Bloom. "Show me the magic that will save my kingdom," ordered the queen. Bloom placed a bucket of mud at the queen's feet. "How dare you?" bellowed the queen. She dismissed Bloom as a trickster and rode off. "Have it your way," said Bloom. She picked up her bucket and skipped back to where she came from. "What of the magical creature?" asked the king upon the queen's return. Broken glass crunched under her feet as she crossed the room. Rain fell from the cracks in the ceiling. "Clearly, it is too frightened to speak directly with royalty. We must send someone ordinary." Genevieve was exactly that, the smallest and quietest in the kingdom. Her only job in the palace was to collect, wash, and dry the queen's exquisite sugar spoon. I guess everything's okay. Genevieve. Her only job in the palace was to collect and wash and dry the queen's exquisite crystal sugar spoon. It was the single object in the kingdom that that had not yet cracked, and the queen summoned Genevieve to her chambers and explained the dire situation. "You are our last hope," she said kindly. "I will not fail you, my queen," Genevieve said in her tiny voice. She brushed the broken glass out of her hair and packed a small bag and left for the forest. Pardon me. Genevieve traveled through the dark woods without carriage or guard. Bloom heard the sound of her feet pressing into the ground and stepped out to greet the girl. "I'm looking for a magical creature gone many years ago," said Genevieve. "I am here," said Bloom. It's like Errol Flynn. Do you know who Errol Flynn is? Boy, if you haven't seen an Errol Flynn movie, are you in for a treat? You should go see him. "Have you any magic to save the kingdom?" Boom placed a bucket of mud at the girl's feet. "Perhaps if I explain," said Genevieve. "You see, our kingdom is built of glass, and it's falling to pieces." Bloom placed a shovel at Genevieve's feet. "I'm happy to help you with your chores, but perhaps you could show me the magic first," Genevieve said. Bloom studied the tiny girl for a moment. She was so delicate. She had barely left a footprint behind her. "What is your work in the kingdom?" asked Bloom. "I collect and wash and dry the queen's crystal sugar spoon," Genevieve told her. "Is that all you can do?" asked Bloom, hoping she did not sound too harsh. "Actually, I'm not really sure," said Genevieve. "It's all I'm allowed to do, lest my hands get too rough or too dirty to properly care for the spoon." Why would the king and queen send a delicate child with such a delicate job deep into the dark forest to do something they could not? "Because I am ordinary," answered Genevieve. A dark shadow passed over Bloom's face. She picked up her bucket, she picked up her shovel, she took the girl by the hand. "I will show you the magic that can save your kingdom," said Bloom. Bloom led the girl into a clearing with a small house, a working fire, and an enormous pit of mud. She plunged both her hands into the pit, hurled the brown glob into the ground, and quickly made a mud pie. You try it, said Bloom. I mustn't, cried Genevieve. I'll never be able to touch the Queen's sugar spoon again. Do you wish to save the kingdom? Asked Bloom quietly. Genevieve did not want to fail the Queen. She closed her eyes, stuck her hands in the bucket, and pulled out a scoop of wet, gloppy earth. Nervously, she shook her hands, and the mud fell to the ground, splattering everywhere. Not bad, said Bloom with a smile. And Genevieve laughed and brushed the splatters off of her feet. Now, try again, Bloom encouraged. This time, Genevieve enjoyed the cool, shifting feeling of the mud, so different from the delicate spoon. She flung it into the ground exactly as Bloom had. Wabba! Nicely done, Bloom said. Finally, Genevieve shaped the mud into a small brown pie. Perfect, announced Bloom. Let's make some magic. Genevieve watched Bloom as she shaped one of the mud pies into a perfect brick. She pulled her hair back with her muddy fingers and rolled up her sleeves and tried to do the same. She made a lopsided, lumpy, oval brick. You'll get it, said Bloom. After 16 more tries, Genevieve had made a perfect brick. What else can I do? Asked the girl. You'll see, said Bloom. Shovel after shovel, bucket after bucket. She showed Genevieve how to add straw to the mud, and that made the bricks even stronger. When her pile of bricks towered over her head, Genevieve was not tired at all, but eager to do more. Bloom showed her how to make mortar by mixing mud with sand. What's that for? Genevieve asked. You'll see, Bloom told her, and brick by brick, and row by row, and wall by wall, the fairy and the girl built a sturdy house in the middle of the forest. I can't believe what we've done, shouted Genevieve. You must go back to the kingdom and share your magic, said Bloom. But how can I bring a house? Asked the girl. You can't, said Bloom. You can only tell the king and queen what you can do. They will never believe that an ordinary girl could do such an extraordinary thing. Genevieve worried. What would I tell them? Tell them there is no such thing as an ordinary girl, said Bloom. Genevieve returned to the kingdom. Her feet were caked in mud, and there was dirt between her teeth. Beetles were resting in her hair, and she knocked on the palace door and shattered it to pieces. I am here, she shouted. And then an ordinary girl rebuilt a kingdom. Yeah, Genevieve. That was a really good book. Bloom by Doreen, Cronin, and David Small. Well, thanks for coming to Storytime. Let's have another Storytime tomorrow.